Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron and I am back with part 2 of our tutorial on how to play BattleTech Override. So our first video was really just an intro, an overview to whet your palate and also to take a look at the record sheet, the mech record sheet there, and the various components of it. So that was just a little high level teaser in case you had no idea what it was or you wanted to just understand at a very high level what BattleTech Override is. Now, the next 3 videos, this one and the subsequent 2 to follow, are going to be deep dives into various sections of the game. So by phase, this video is going to talk about initiative and movement. The next video is going to talk about the combat phase, which is just big in and of itself. And then the last video is going to talk about piloting skill rolls, the heat, and the end phase. All right. So, and then after that, we'll do force building, and then we'll do the live gameplay demo. So let's start by talking about initiative. So what I want to do here is I'm going to bring up the rules reference. This rules reference is basically a document that we compiled that fills in the blanks on some of the things that are not in MechWarrior Destiny. And also basically is like a sort of a quick reference guide, if you will. There's a quick reference sheet that's separate. So this is basically just a reference to help you understand the flow of the game. So let me bring that up here. I want to talk through it and basically walk you through all the important stuff, the things that you need to know. So the important thing is there's 3 modes of initiative. So you can decide with your buddy before you play, you can decide what mode of initiative you want to play with. 2 of them are optional. I mean, they're really all optional. You can choose which one you want, or you can use all 3 of them when it best suits you or makes sense. We typically play a combination of fast initiative, like early in the game where it doesn't matter, and then cinematic initiative, when decisioning really comes into play. But basically, the 3 modes are as follows. There's basic, which is what you would find in classic. You roll, I roll. The loser has to act first. They pick a unit, they move it. You pick a unit, and we go back and forth unit by unit. You can move them in any order. It doesn't really matter if there's unequal number of forces. There's math and fractions involved to figure out how many you need to move when. That's basic. Those rules are in the BattleTech manual. They're in Total Warfare. There's the fast mode for initiative. This is what you'd find in Alpha Strike. So that's where, again, we do the 2d6 roll. The loser then moves their entire force. Then the winner moves their entire force. Then the loser shoots everybody. Then the winner shoots with everybody, right? And that's kind of how that works. Cinematic is what I want to talk about because that's new. I think it's very fun. I think it's dynamic. There's pros and cons to it, like every initiative system on God's green earth. But I'll tell you about this one and how it works. So basically, each unit is assigned a bracket. All right. So a bracket is, just think of it like a number from 0 to 10. Really not 0 to 10. It's probably more like 0 to 4, 0 to 5. You put units in these brackets based on the unmodified TMM of the unit. So you ignore sprint and jump. So for example, like a Zeus is TMM 1. A Valkyrie is TMM 2. A Raven's TMM 2. A Wasp is TMM 2. A Locust is TMM 3, right? You would put all the 1s in bracket 1, all the 2s in bracket 2, the 3s in bracket 3, right? That's how that works. All right. When we roll, so I roll, you roll, right, for initiative, the winner acts last in each bracket. And we start with the slowest, lowest bracket and go up to the top. So, like everyone in the first bracket, TMM 1 units, they all act first. So if I lost initiative, all of my TMM 1 mechs would move, units would move, then yours would go. Then we go to TMM 2, and then 3, and then 4. So even though I lost the initiative roll, if I'm the only guy with a locust and you have a whole force of annihilators, guess what? Like, I still get to move after you. I would still get that last move even though you won initiative. And some people are like, oh, that sucks. I mean, I made this roll for nothing. And yeah, that's true, but I don't see why an annihilator should be able to outmaneuver a locust. Just is what it is. So again, it's good for some, not good for everybody. You may decide you want to modify it. You may decide you love it. But that's how it is done by the book, as it were. All right. So let's walk through an example. There's actually a really good example here in the rules reference. And it details two forces, like me and Kevin playing a game. I have a Zeus, a Rifleman, a Ryan, and a Star Slayer. Um, and Kevin's got a Gargoyle, a Vulture, and a Mongrel. And the TMMs are listed here. So Zeus, Orion, Rifleman are all TMM 1. Gargoyle and Vulture and Star Slayer are 2, and the Mongrel is 3. Right? So in the prior example, let's say I win initiative, right? And you know, let's say we roll 2d6. I win, that means Kevin has to move first. But because even though I won initiative, because Kevin has no units in this TMM in this TMM1 bracket, I still move everybody. Then in the second bracket, because Kevin lost, he would move his Golcher and Vargoyle. Sorry, his Gargoyle and Vulture, and then I would move my Star Slayer. And then in TMM3, even though I won initiative, Kevin's the only one with a unit in that bracket, so he would move his Mongrel. Combat, shooting, attacking, right? That all follows the same system, right? So really what you can do is you can make almost like a sheet, or if you have a whiteboard or whatever, and you just kind of can write down, and you know the brackets, right? It makes it very easy to kind of move through who gets to go when. Now, some interesting things here. So there's an optional rule for modified reactions, right? So when you're using the cinematic initiative system, you can use the modified TMM, including penalties from heat, critical hits. If the pilot has taken a hit, right? So like he's a little dazed, maybe he's not as quick. So all of those things would apply, and that can actually mid-combat adjust. So maybe that mongrel's really fast, but you knocked off his leg and he's now immobilized, or TMM, maybe you blow off both his legs, he's immobilized, TMM 0, whatever. Now he's all the way at the bottom and has to act first, right? So there's some neat things you can do with modified reactions if you like that. It is a slightly more record keeping, I guess, but overall it's pretty cool. I think it's fun. All right, so let's talk about some basic movement costs. So we talked about in the intro video, I showed the card for the Rifleman, and that Rifleman had a movement value of 4/6. All right, and actually, you know what I want to do here is I'm going to bring up the Valkyrie. There it is. All right, so now you can see this Valkyrie here. So this Valkyrie is a little different. I want to bring this one up because it jumps, right? So you see it says 585J and then 233, right? So this is the movement in inches that it can move for each mode: walk, sprint, jump, and this is the TMM associated with that movement mode. So if I declare that I'm sprinting, I can move 8 inches. My TMM would be 3. If I want to jump, I can jump up to 5 inches. My TMM would be 3. If I want to walk, I can move up to 5 inches. My TMM would be 2. All right. So back to this. So when you move, right, moving through open ground, we call that a clear hex in Classic. There's no penalty. Like I could just move 5 inches. All right. I have to move at least 1 inch. If I move less than an inch, it's considered stationary, which we'll talk about in a minute. I have to move at least 1 inch to be considered moving and claim my TMM. When I run into certain terrain, it can affect my movement. There's a big table here, right? And this is, again, out of Alpha Strike, out of Classic. It's all there. We didn't make anything up. You're moving through woods, right? And we just play with light woods. We use basically light woods for everything. It's an additional 1 inch, right? If you want to incorporate heavy woods or ultra dense, there's all kinds of crazy rules out there, and all the optional rules. You can do whatever you want. But woods, additional 1 inch. Going through depth 1 water, additional 1 inch, right? So if I'm moving up a hill, it costs an additional 1 inch. So if I want to move, let's say, 5 inches, right? But I have to move through 2 inches worth of light woods. Well, I can't move 5. I can only move 3 because 2 of those inches are going to cost an additional 1 movement, right? So basically, I move an inch, it costs 2. I move another inch through the woods, it costs 4, right? Then I can move my last 5, right? We'll talk about jumping in a minute, but jumping can ignore terrain, right? You can go up, down levels, you can jump over woods, you can do all sorts of cool stuff with jump jets. It's important to note for elevation, it costs movement when you go up or down a hill, not just going up. So any elevation change does cost 1 inch. Mechs can actually climb 2 levels at a time, which is kind of neat. Vehicles can't do that. Infantry can't do that. All right, so let's talk about sprinting here real quick. So when you sprint, it's a fixed value. It's typically 1.5 times your move. It matches the run speed in classic. It is rounded up, so like a 5 times 1.5 is 7.5. It rounds up to 8. So you're 5, you sprint 8. The interesting thing about sprinting that's different from Alpha Strike, that's different from, but does match classic to some degree, is that you increase your TMM. So that's baked into the card, like we looked at. It's already on the sheet for you, so you don't have to think about it. But it is important to note that when you sprint, you gain TMM. When you sprint, you cannot shoot. This is from Alpha Strike. However, there is an optional rule. You'll see it here. It's called run and gun. When a unit sprints, it can declare a run and gun. You build up 1 heat, and then in the combat phase, you may make a ranged attack. You take a +1 penalty to the attacks made. You may opt not to shoot. You still build up the 1 heat, but that's a cool option. And that's actually from an Alpha Strike. I believe it's from the Mercenaries, like the Field Guide or whatever the heck they were called, where they only made the Fed Sons one and the Mercenaries one. Oh, actually it was a Draconis Combine one and the Mercenaries one. Those are the only two they ever made. The other interesting movement mode is stationary. This is out of Alpha Strike. You have no TMM. Your TMM is 0 if you're stationary. You can move like a half of an inch. You can move up to basically just below an inch, right? So in any direction, you kind of shuffle around a little bit. But you get a -1 bonus to shooting. So think of it like gaming. That's how stationary works. So jumping, we talked about a little bit. Mechs have these, the powerful jump jets, boosters essentially that allow them to leap through the air. They can move a number of inches equal to their jump. They ignore terrain. They ignore elevation. They can change elevation vertically up. They can increase their elevation equal to their maximum jump. So, for example, if I was in a city and there was a level 4 building in front of me, or let's say a level 5 building in front of me, and I'm a Valkyrie and my jump is 5, I can clear that building. I can still go 5 inches. It doesn't cost me movement points to go up. That's just like a gauge to say how high I could go up. That level 5 building could be at the 5 inches away. I could still get up on top of it. That's just how that works. So that's how elevation change works. Jumping does affect your ability to shoot. There's a +2 modifier to your gunnery. That's a bad thing, a +2. And it also builds up a point of heat whenever you jump. It's irrespective of how far you go. It's always just one point of heat when you jump. You can also go prone. This is a free move. It doesn't cost anything. You just drop to the ground. It is harder to shoot. It's harder to get shot unless somebody's right next to you, in which case it's very easy for them to shoot you and then curb stomp you. But other than that, you can basically hide behind cover. You can do all sorts of neat things with going prone if you use it tactically. So you can also crawl. So this is a new movement mode that we added. So there's no going prone in Alpha Strike. There's no piloting in Alpha Strike. There's no falling down in Alpha Strike. In Classic, when you are prone, you can't move because, remember, a hexlight kind of represents, fairly large swath of area, right? Like 30 meters, basically. And so, when you're prone and you crawl, you don't move. You can just change your hex facing. In this game, because of the cinematic nature of it, we wanted mechs to be able to crawl and move and do a little bit more. So when you are prone, you can crawl 1 inch. You have a TMM of 0. So that allows mechs to do some things, especially when they have no leg, because they can't stand up. Like if they take a leg hit and their leg falls off, or their gyro is totally hosed, that allows them to move around a little bit. I will say this too, and I probably should have said this earlier. There is no cost if you're a Classic player. There's no cost for changing your facing. In Alpha Strike, you can just pivot and look whichever way you want. That is a free move. So in this, if I want to move straight back, I can do that. If I want to turn around and move on a 130 degree, like whatever, you can do whatever you want. Facing It matters in the game, front and rear, but you can turn to face in your movement phase free however you want at no cost. All right, the other important movement mode is standing up. So that's the last one here, I believe, on this page. It's listed. It costs 2 inches to stand up, so 2 inches of movement. So my Valkyrie moves 585. I can sprint and stand, and I get up, and I have 6 movement left because I was at 8. I subtract 2. I have 6 left. I can go in a certain direction. If you have less than the requisite movement, I guess is what I'm trying to say, you can still stand up. You can always try to stand up. The thing about standing is you always reduce your TMM. Regardless of whether I'm standing up and sprinting 6 hexes or whether I'm an annihilator and I can barely get off the ground, you always reduce your TMM by 1. That's the penalty of being prone and having to get back up. It takes time and you're sort of a vulnerable target, and that TMM reduction sort of is what reflects that. Okay, that is movement in a nutshell. So again, we went over initiative. We went over the 3 different kinds, right? There's just the standard classic variety, which we call basic. There's fast initiative, which is, basically as written in Alpha Strike. And then there's the cinematic initiative where you bracket units by TMM. It's a little bit more dynamic. It rewards faster mechs that are otherwise potentially very fragile. So it gives them a little bit more of a lease on life. I think that's very cool. We went over movement. We went over all the various different types of movement. I would encourage you to take a look at the rules reference. Again, you can find some additional information in Alpha Strike as well, as largely a lot of the movement rules come from that. If you're wondering, the MechWarrior Destiny movement rules are extremely abstract. It's like theater of the mind. So there's no rules at all about the level of detail that you would need to make it a war game. So that's why we chose to pull in and graft on the movement rules from Alpha Strike. So a couple of things. First, Aries Games and Minis, guys, the books, the dice, the minis, terrain, everything you need to fuel your BattleTech addiction can be found over at Aries Games and Minis. Absolutely love the prices, love the service. Derek's phenomenal, so don't forget to show him some love and head on over to Aries Games and Minis for your next BattleTech purchase. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and subscribe. Was super thrilled. We hit 12,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. That was a huge milestone for us. It was what we were shooting for, so really, really thrilled. And thanks to all you guys for being a part of that. And if you haven't subscribed, it's okay. You're still a part of it. Just click the subscribe button. And if you want to help out more, head on over to Patreon. It's as little as $1 a month. There's $1, $5, $10. Those are our core tiers. So you guys can certainly get involved there at various levels. There's sneak peeks, there's polls, things you can vote on in terms of the direction of the channel. You get to comment on what you want to see. You get all kinds of updates. It's very, very cool. And of course, most importantly, it helps keep the lights on here at the studio. It keeps us doing what we're doing. So really, really appreciate all of our patrons and coming over and join the party. But that said, I'm all done marketing. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this little deep dive here in the movement and initiative phases. More coming. Remember, we've got combat next. That's a big one. And then piloting, heat, and end in another. Force building, and then the walkthrough battle report. So keep your eyes out for that. Otherwise, of course, stay tuned. Always great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming. Guys, have a great night.